Hello, friends. Welcome in. It's 12:04. May I be the first to say a good afternoon to you and yours. Beautiful day in Music City. I hope it's gorgeous wherever you might be listening from. It's Super Talk 99.7 WTN. Wednesday, October 4, 2023. It is our episode 428 on these airwaves, and we hope to make it a good one until 3 o'clock when we hand off to Brian Wilson in the drive later on this afternoon. 615-737-9986 is always the super text line. That's also the telephone line. At any point during the proceedings, if you desire to speak truth to power and perhaps offer your opinion on the matters before the Murphy Show, then you may do so by those numbers and by that super text line. We'll have those up and running presently. We've lots to do today, as you might expect. We have invited a lot of guests on the show, although I do not feel as if we'll get many of them. One of the guests that will show is Tim Burchett. Tim will be on the show at 12:35 this afternoon to explain why he decided to join the Gang of Eight in voting against Kevin McCarthy and in favor of new leadership in the House of Representatives, joining all of the Democrats. Obviously, the Democrats want to sow the seeds of chaos. That's all well and good. Tim Burchett will be with us at 12:35 this afternoon. We've also invited a number of other of our representatives. We spoke to Scott Desjardins earlier in the week. He kind of explained where he was on this. You might have heard Andy Ogles on the Chris Hand Show. I've got more to say about that coming up in just a moment. We have invited Mark Green. Congressman Green's office tells me two things. One, they are not offering themselves up to become the next Speaker of the House. That's news. I'll read you that statement coming in just a moment. And secondarily, they do not have time today to be on the show. They're all tied up between noon and 3. I did not inquire as to exactly what that means and why they would be tied up during a time when the government has decided to take another recess until next Wednesday. But that's neither here nor there. It's all good. It's all good. We can work these things out as a conservative/libertarian family without making it personal. So yesterday we saw a historic vote. There have been votes to vacate the chair of Speaker in the past in America's history. None of them have been successful. The last by Joe Cannon was actually called by Joe Cannon. Joe Cannon got so sick of people demanding that he do this, that, or the other thing differently that in 1910, Joe Cannon decided to call a motion to vacate himself. He did so. He survived that motion. And then that's pretty good politicking right there.
I quit. No, you don't.
No, so many folks were like, they were demanding. Okay, fine. I will present a motion to vacate. Joe Cannon will present a motion to vacate Joe Cannon as Speaker of the House. Y'all want it? Here it is. Come and get it. And they declined. And then eventually they named a building after the guy, the Cannon Building, which is right across the street from the Capitol. So there's lots to unpack over what happened over the last 24 hours. Let's take it here. So in the short term, Democrats will use their minions in the mainstream media to blame Republicans on everything. But what else is new? They were going to do that anyway. I've been told by many Republicans that I've spoken with over the last 20 hours or so that Matt Gaetz and the rest of the Gang of Eight handed the Democrats a victory. They handed them a continuing resolution. It does not have to be that way. Sadly, that's probably what's going to happen because there are many Republicans that would have liked to have seen a continuing resolution anyway. And I fear that they have yet to receive the message from the American people, from the people of the state of Tennessee. I would dare say that 2/3 of you agree with me that apparently they're not getting the message about fiscal responsibility in Washington, D.C., to the point that it is necessary for us to completely upset the apple cart without regard for where the apples go. That's the entire point. Well, we've got to be careful about those apples, Matt. You can't disturb the apples. Then why would I dump the apple cart to begin with? I'm doing so not just to express my frustration and dismay about where all of this is going. I'm doing so to send a message to you. that whether or not you in Washington, D.C., be you a Democrat, Republican, conservative, liberal, leftist, socialist, whatever you feel about where this is going, this remains a representative republic. And those that you represent, those that you expect to vote for you in the next election cycle, we are disturbed, dare I say, disgusted at the amount of overspending that's going on in Washington, D.C. And I don't care who's in control, and I don't care about your petty problems anymore. There's always an excuse. For 25 years, I've been sitting in a chair similar to this one, and for 25 years, we've been discussing these same issues, and for 25 years, conservatives like stupid Newt Gingrich have been telling me how I just don't understand. I just don't get it. And last night, there's Newt on Fox News explaining to all of us dunderhead conservatives and libertarians who are concerned about the national debt that we just don't get it, that we just handed the Democrats the victory. What don't we get? What don't we get about the existential threat that is the national debt? The sad reality is there are way too many so-called Republicans in D.C. or conservatives in D.C. that don't care because they know they don't have to be around when the chickens come home to roost. But your children do, and your grandchildren do. The entire point of upsetting an apple cart is not caring where the apples go. If you cared where the apples go, you wouldn't tip it over. So for all of you saying, well, what happens next? I don't know. Remains to be seen. It's a mystery. Let's all find out together. Let's see if those that we wanted to send a message have actually received the message. Okay, let's see. Example number one of how I would suggest to you that they have not. By the way, I failed to do some of the pleasantries, and I apologize for that. Bell K is running the show as executive producer, making sure that everything that comes out of our speakers sounds as good as humanly possible. Thank you, Headless Bell, for doing so. We're on Super Talk TV, YouTube, Facebook, Twitter, Twitch. It is episode 428. What is the title of today's episode?
Matt Murphy voted out of the host chair, but we had no replacement ready. Noon to 3. The libertarian lunch. Maybe Kevin McCarthy wants to do radio.
Maybe Kevin McCarthy does want to do radio, you think? I think he would fail miserably. He would not last 279 days.
And by the way, if you want to know what the count was, it was 2-1.
2-1 what?
The vote. You're gone.
Oh, for me?
Yeah.
Wait a minute. Wait, did I get to vote?
Yeah. We just assumed you were going to vote to stay, so.
Oh, in that case, it was 3-0. I'm out. Well, who else voted? Maury?
Of course.
Did Mandis not get a vote?
No, he's on vacation.
That's true. That's true. Not anymore. His vacation officially ended when he called me at 11:20 this morning. Hey, what's been going on? He didn't say that, but I wanted him to.
I've been getting emails since Sunday. So.
Hey, anything going on today?
That's all I got.
Anything in the news?
Got to go.
All right, very well. Got to go. Click. So, allow me, if you will, and I'm very curious your thoughts on all of these things. Obviously, we open up the phone lines throughout the course of the day. What is today, Bell? The day of the week.
Wednesday.
It's Wednesday.
Your Thursday.
It's Wednesday, my Thursday, because I'm out on Friday. So that means Thursday's my Friday, not Friday. That means today's my Friday Eve. That's for all of you people that hate me.
It's Friday Eve all day long on the Matt Murphy Show.
Yeah. If tomorrow's my Friday because I'm out on Friday, then today would be my... Anyway. Today is Wednesday, October 4th. Bell, have you heard when they're going back into session in the House of Representatives?
Oh, I figure it's got to be immediately, right?
That's what one would figure.
I mean, urgent business to take care of.
So, they don't care. They're not serious people. They're not serious about actually passing budgets. They haven't been serious about actually passing budgets. They'll claim that they were serious. They'll claim that CR was the most conservative thing they could possibly get, that cut spending by 30%. I've heard all of the excuses. They passed a stopgap measure with the help of the Democrats, did Kevin McCarthy, that gave them 45 days to finish up their appropriations. Here's the bottom line. Kevin McCarthy wanted to be Speaker of the House. He had a razor-thin majority, and so he had to make certain concessions to certain members of his own political party in order to become Speaker. And one of those concessions was that a singular member of the party could offer a motion to vacate. Now, if he did not want to abide by that, he should not have agreed to that. Well, he wouldn't have been Speaker. They would have figured it out. Maybe McCarthy wouldn't have been Speaker. I don't know. Secondarily, one of the several concessions that he made as a way to get back to regular order was an agreement that we would pass appropriations bills as we should be passing them through the normal budgetary process. And Kevin McCarthy made a commitment to every member of the House of Representatives and every American citizen as he agreed to these concessions to become Speaker, that he would get this done by September 30th. Instead, they had to pass a 45-day stopgap continuing resolution with the help of the Democrats. Now, they claim, we had a CR. I thought that's what we were getting away from, these continuing resolutions. That's called business as usual in Washington, D.C. Sadly, Republicans, much like their Democrat colleagues, they're addicted to free money, free money, free money, and they can't get away from it. We are living in an era, ladies and gentlemen, where one party believes in taxing and spending and the other party believes in borrowing. I'm sorry, let me say it correctly. One party believes in taxing, borrowing, and spending. The other party believes in taxing slightly less, borrowing, and spending. And at some point, we have to say no more. So Kevin McCarthy agreed to those rules. He did not abide by his side of the rules, and he was ousted as a result. Now, it is perfectly reasonable that some might have a different take on this. And I've talked to many of those individuals today, offline. Many of them who are willing to speak off air are not willing to go on air because they want cooler heads to prevail. Cooler heads to prevail. To wit, you've got a clock ticking of 45 days before you see the possibility of another government shutdown the week before Thanksgiving. The possibility exists that the Democrats in the Senate will attempt to push forward an omnibus spending package that every Republican claims that they hate and no Republican claims that they want to do. I would suggest to you that the Republicans that are currently in charge are attempting to wag their fingers and blame members of their own party more so than getting back to the business of doing the people's business. And so, because yesterday was such a history-making day, and because the temperature in the room was running hot, I understand why they might want to gavel out for a day or so. But they didn't gavel out for 24 hours to come back today to try to figure it out and to figure out who would be the next speaker. They didn't gavel out until Friday. They're not staying over the weekend. No, they gavelled out for a week. Now, I was publicly educated in the state of Georgia, so my math not my strongest suit. But 45 days minus 7 would leave 38 days. That's just over a month. Minus the weekends, now you're dealing with, 24 days? Something along those lines? Forget about Monday. They're not doing any work on Mondays, so strike another 5 days out of that. We're now less than 30 days away. So let's call it 4 weeks. 28 days, 4 weeks, minus this week that they're wasting to get 8 separate appropriations bills through the House and to the Senate and actually have the Senate to do something with it. Where's the sense of urgency? Why did they not stay in Washington, D.C. to try to deal with the speaker's situation today? Can anyone reasonably answer that question in a way that would make sense to me? Well, cooler heads. Shut up, cooler heads. We got to go beyond that. What possible excuse do they have in going home and not coming back to work until next Wednesday? They now literally have one job to do. Absent everything else, they have one job to do: elect a Speaker of the House. There are several individuals that have offered themselves up to that service. Representative Steve Scalise is one of them. Representative Jim Jordan is another. Are these not good alternatives to Kevin McCarthy? I would say so, yes. Why the delay? I believe they're setting us up for an omnibus spending package, and I think that is a part of a punishment plan for real conservatives in Washington, D.C. And yes, I listened to the interview this morning with Congressman Andy Ogles and our own Chris Hand. I thought Chris did a great job. I hope all of you felt like Chris did a great job. You hold those feet to the fire without being disrespectful of the individual. I managed to accomplish at least one of those two things on occasion, but I thought it was a fabulous job. I'm not here to wag my finger against Congressman Andy Ogles. What he did, he did. But I would say this: in your run-up, in your campaign for Congress, and in your service in Congress, you developed a brand. And that brand was a guy that was fearless, that was willing to make the hard choices that are the right choices for the American people, and more importantly, for the people of the 5th Congressional District of the state of Tennessee. And I believe your vote yesterday failed that brand and failed those people. I understand why reasonable people would disagree on the vote yesterday. I don't understand why Andy Ogles voted the way that he did. But we might share some of that interview with you at some point over the course of the proceedings today. It's 12:22. We'll get you on the line, 615-737-9986. Obviously, this is the central topic of conversation. There are other topics of conversation that we'll get into as well as we just get underway on The Murphy Show on Super Talk 99.7 WTN. Had the opportunities to speak with Brink Fiddler of Defend Systems yesterday in studio at length. You know, Defend Systems is a life safety and security consultation firm based in Middle Tennessee. They have expertise which lies in experience. For nearly 2 decades, they planned and executed over 1,000 high-risk law enforcement tactical operations, meaning they understand how to engage in those tactical operations, and they understand through their training and their knowledge how to provide you a workplace or a school or a church setting that works for you, for your safety and your security. They deal in active shooter response training, workplace violence prevention. They do site surveys and threat assessment, security consultation of all types, and rapid response medical training, all customized for your facility. I strongly encourage you to reach out today at 615-236-6484, 236-6484, or go to defendsystems.com. That's defendsystems.com. Trust Defend Systems for your workplace, for your school, or for your church. Hope is not a plan. It is time to get trained with Defend Systems. Tim Burchett coming up in just a few moments on the Matt Murphy Show on Super Talk 99.7 WTN. I don't know why I'm having audio issues on my mic, but I am. I'll try to improve on that as the day progresses. Maybe that was it. 615-737-9986. If you'd like to be a part of the show, you're always invited. As I mentioned, Congressman Tim Burchett coming up at 12:35 this afternoon. I invited you, and you have responded. Frank is next up. Hey, Frank, how are you?
Fine. Hey, I want to bring some up to your audience. There's something called the debtclock.org. People need to check that out because it's more than just the $33 trillion that's at stake here. The military, they were saying, well, their military's not going to be paid, but you have to feed them. Ships that are at sea, you can't stop, and there are all these different things, including student debt and other things that are listed on the debtclock.org, and we're hundreds of trillions in unsecured debt in a lot of areas, not just the 33, but it's got to start somewhere, and the untold billions of wasted money and wasted grants and things, it's almost have to go back to a complete clearing of the table and starting all over with a lot of the stuff and start going line by line, finding out what we're spending all this money on.
Hey, just real quick, it's usdebtclock.org, not debtclock.
Yeah.
.org. usdebtclock.org. Yeah.
It's an eye-opener if you look at it.
Oh, yeah, and right now we're at 33 trillion, 444 billion, 620 million, and running.
Yeah.
But I'll tell you what is more eye-opening than anything. If you go to usdebtclock.org, go back to, I don't know, for example, today's 2023, obviously. This year's 2023. Go back to 2020. Right now we're at $33 trillion. In 2020, we were at $26 trillion. I don't know how many people recognize that. In 2016, we were at $19 trillion. So we have added around $13 trillion to the national debt since 2016. If you want, I mean, that's
limited.
There is an explosion of debt going on that cannot be continuously sustained. And I'm listening. Thank you, Frank, for the call. I'm listening this morning to Fox and Friends. I watch so you don't have to. And they're giving, Brian Kilmeade, and I have respect for Kilmeade. I've known him for a while. I met him years and years ago when he was hawking a book. He seems like a good enough guy. He has given Representative Burchett hell and back for his vote, and Burchett tries to explain to him why he voted the way that he did. Well, Kevin McCarthy's not responsible for that $33 trillion. Well, he's the one that offered himself to leadership, and he's the one that promised to do something about it, and if he's not going to do something about it, we need to get somebody that will.
And how many of his votes helped pass that?
Right. It's not just that we're not doing anything about the debt. I'll go back 2023. In 2012. You know what the national debt was in 2012? That is 11 years ago.
I want to say like 18 trillion?
15 trillion.
15 trillion.
We have more than doubled it in 11 years.
The good news is all we have to do is print money and pay it.
Does anybody not understand what's going on here? The Republicans have become a part of the problem largely, not a part of the solution. It is an existential threat to the future of the United States of America to continue to operate in the same fashion. And one person that gets it is Representative Tim Burchett, and he will join us next on The Murphy Show on Super Talk 99.7 WTN. Super Talk 99.7 WTN 1236. We'll get back to your telephone calls, your comments about activities over the last 24 hours, primarily out of Washington, D.C. The removal of Kevin McCarthy as Speaker of the House. It remains to be seen who will replace him. One of the individuals voting to vacate the chair was Representative Tim Burchett, and he joins us on the Murphy Show hotline this afternoon. Tim, good afternoon. I hope you're well.
Hey, appreciate y'all having me on. I miss Middle Tennessee.
Well, I bet you do. Man, oh man, who needs friends like Fox News? Or wait, who needs enemies when you've got friends like Fox News? I guess is what I'm trying to say. So you're getting beat up on all sides, I suppose. Just talk about your vote, your decision-making process, and how you came to the vote that you did.
Well, I went down two paths in my mind. If you'll let me talk about it a little bit here real quick. I like Kevin McCarthy. I considered him a friend, and I thought, do I want to upset my friend, lose my friendship with Kevin McCarthy, or do I want to trust my conscience? And then I trusted my conscience, and I prayed about it, and that's what I did, and I came to that conclusion. We're $33 trillion in debt. We take in $5 trillion a year. We spend $7 trillion conservative-wise. We can't continue down this path. We do a continuation budget of 30 days, and they say, "Well, pass this other one, Burchett, so we won't pass another one." That's like telling a crackhead, "Hey, I'm going to give you a rock of crack to get you off of crack." Man, that doesn't work, and it never has. All we're doing now is spending our great-grandchildren's money. So I said enough was enough. I tried to get leadership to get all. There's about 15 of us or so that were kind of hardliners on this stuff. Tried to get leadership to get us in a room to talk about it. They wouldn't do it. They sent us home on a long weekend when they shouldn't have. Again, September 30th comes around about this time every year. You can check your dadgum calendar. It'll happen. And then here we are. We're $33 trillion in debt. We're kicking the can down the road, and they're declaring victory. And to me, that's not victory. That is abdicating your duty. We are required by law to pass a budget in 12 appropriations amendments. We haven't done that in 30 years. And the reason they do it is they get these continuation budgets or continuing resolutions. It's chock full of all the stuff so they can grease their lobbyist friends in the special interest and the Pentagon and the war pimps over there, and then they pass it. We had two, oddly enough, and this shows you the lack of leadership. We had two appropriations bills, one dealing with agriculture and the other dealing with the Pentagon. The agriculture bill had a lot of cuts in it. It did not pass. The Pentagon budget had $30 billion new dollars, and it was more money than the president even asked for. The Pentagon has never passed an audit. They lose billions of dollars in black ops and all this other garbage they're doing that they have no business being involved in. And at one time, 60% of their assets were unaccounted for. Yet I'm unpatriotic because I don't vote for their budgets. It's just ridiculous. We've got to have leadership. We got to have somebody strong in that position. We did not. We're going to put somebody in there strong, and that's why I voted the way I did.
So what do you say to those who, and make sure my audio is where it should be, please, Bell. I'm not hearing myself as much as I'm hearing Tim, but when
you sound good.
Well, I want to make sure I can hear you and you can hear me. So when I hear from conservative members of the House of Representatives, and I've talked to several of them in Tennessee, in Alabama, and other places, who say that it was as conservative of a continuing resolution as you could have expected to get. The first one, is that the one that you're referring to that talks about the 30% increase in defense spending?
Yeah, but it doesn't matter. A continued resolution is an abdication of our duties. We are required to pass a budget. A continued resolution is not a budget. We don't have budget hearings. We don't, and the reason we don't is so leadership can stay in power. And the powerful people up here still grease. It doesn't matter what side, who has the majority. When we're in power, we spend it on missile defense systems that everybody on both sides of the aisle owns stock in. When they're in power, they spend it on woke programs.
What do you say in response to people like former Speaker Newt Gingrich, who says that Matt Gaetz, and by extension you, I don't think that he called you out by name, but you were among the 8 Republicans that voted to vacate the chair, when he says that you're not really Republicans and you should be kicked out of the conference?
I'd say Newt needs to stay in his lane. Is this the same Newt Gingrich that divorced his wife who had breast cancer in the hospital, that served her with papers in the hospital? You know, that guy is not my moral compass. He's just selling books, and he gets on Fox and he does his thing. He was run out of this town on a rail. That's great what he did when he did it, but he's not here anymore. And I'm kind of sick of that kind of stuff coming from people like him. This country, we have a very short memory, and we're very forgiving. And I think some people need to remember who they're talking about. And for me to vote against trillions of dollars, we ran up $1 trillion in debt in 3 months this year. When I'm on the phone with Kevin McCarthy, and he makes excuses. He says, "Well, I said, why were we on vacation for 6 weeks? Well, I don't set the schedule. Or why haven't we had the term limits bill? Well, I don't decide that.
Wait. Stop for a second, Tim. The Speaker of the House at the time that you spoke with him said that he doesn't set the schedule?
That's correct.
Well, who does? Then who does?
Well, I think they're blaming Scalise for that. But he oversees it. The buck stops here. It's not just about cutting ribbons and going and seeing the Pope and flying around in your jet airplane that the taxpayers give you. It's about making tough decisions. That's what leadership is about. And it's gotten to this Hollywood status, and we baby these people and coddle them and throw millions of dollars of assets at them, and that needs to stop.
What about those who say, and I'm just trying to get you to answer some of these questions that have come up over the last 24 hours. What about those who say, Representative Burchett, that they were going to get in this 45-day stopgap, they were going to get the rest of the appropriations done, but because they now have to deal with the speakership issue, that they won't be able to do that? How do you respond to that?
Is that why they didn't start working till yesterday on it? We had all weekend to start on it. We've had since January to work on it. That's when we took over, January. And yet they put it up against September 30th, again, the end of our fiscal year. We took 6 weeks off. There's no urgency there. They want to back it up against the holiday and claim the same and blame it on the conservatives again. And yet they just want to spend more money. That's what it's all about. It's always about the money, both parties. And, it's not going to change until we have a mix-up in leadership, and leadership understands that we're going to hold them accountable. And that's exactly what the 8 of us did. We held them accountable.
Well, Tim, I'm fascinated that there doesn't seem to be any sense of urgency to get a new speaker in place. I mean, you guys gavelled out yesterday, which was Tuesday, and will not go back into session until what, next Wednesday?
Yeah, and that was a huge mistake. I was sitting in the room, and people were saying, "What are you doing?" And he was in charge. McCarthy put Patrick McHenry in charge, and he's one of his chairmen. He's one of his leadership team, and one of his boys. And that's what we got, and that's what we had. That's all we got to work.
Based on that action, it feels to me as if they're giving up on getting anything done with the appropriations bills over the next 45 days. Instead, they feel like they'll draw out the speaker vote and then point the finger at people like you and blame you for a lack of action on appropriations bills that I don't believe ever would have happened in the 45-day window to begin with.
Yeah, they all got their crazy strategy to do that. And it shows you, and in one conversation I had with Kevin McCarthy, the last thing he said was, "But I really want to be speaker." It's more about staying in power and not doing what's right for this country. And that's bottom line. It would all cave in around us, but they want to stay in power. And these groups, they all want to, this is their life, to get up in front of the camera and say that they are whatever. And it just, to me, that's my life's back in East Tennessee, to be honest with you.
Who is the name, or what is the name that you point to as the person that you would like to see as the next speaker. There are a number of names that have offered themselves up to service. I could name them for you. You know who they are, but I don't want to lead you in any particular direction. Who would be your choice?
I've talked to Steve Scalise, and Kevin Hearn tried to call me right when we started on this show, so I suspect he's calling me, asking me. And I told Steve Scalise last night, I don't want to commit to you or anybody else. I want to hear what everybody has to say. I want to find out exactly what they want to do. If they start down this old continuing resolution road, and we need to work, and we need to compromise, and these compromises are what's got us into trouble. But if they're sincere about our fiscal ship, righting our fiscal ship, that's the person I want to see, and that can put a vision forward that we can rally around, not just throw out 3 ideas and then whatever they can get the most votes on, that's the way they're going to go, because that is not leadership. That is just some kind of, that's a feel-good thing, and it's not about feeling good. We better take control of this country, and we better make some tough decisions, because I'll guarantee you, those folks that were griping saying, Birchie, you're going to cause this government to shut down, for 3 or 4 days, and how that's going to hurt people. Well, I guarantee you the single moms in my district that work 2 jobs because we don't have the maturity fiscally to do anything about it will hurt a lot more when the economy crashes and they're having to pay, $100 for a loaf of bread, because we are heading towards that, and we better address it.
I was looking at the U.S. debt clock earlier today. People can find it at usdebtclock.org. Prepare to be very, very depressed. And 11 years ago, our debt was at $15 trillion, which is ridiculous. Yeah. And today it's it's more than doubled. It's $33.4 trillion. Do you believe this to be the greatest existential threat for the United States of America today?
I do, because it will, we keep borrowing from the Chinese. We're addicted to the cheap money or free money or whatever you think it is. And then we just keep spending, and we keep spending, and we won't address it. And now they want to, let's form a blue ribbon committee to study it. We do, stop spending. We're not going to tax ourselves or regulate ourselves into prosperity. We've got to stop with the spending. And you can't keep adding $30 billion to the Pentagon budget every year and expect anything other than what we're seeing right now.
Did you have conversations with any of your colleagues in the state of Tennessee? You were the only Tennessee vote in favor of vacating the chair. Many others have spoken about the need to get our fiscal house in order. However, they saw this a little bit differently. Do you understand where, a Mark Green of the world or an Andy Ogles of the world or a Desjardins was? Do you understand where your colleagues in Tennessee were coming from?
Yeah, maybe I'm a little noble, or maybe I'm just stupid, but I told several of them, you don't need to hang yourself out on this. This is going to get rough. And I knew pretty much where the votes would fall, and that, I was in deep, and I wasn't coming out, and I was committed. And I told several of them that they could just stay where they're at. I'll take the hit.
Whether it's a Steve Scalise or a Jim Jordan who has offered his name to service as speaker, what do you, Tim Burchett, need to hear from them in order for the next speaker to get your support?
I need to hear from them that they are going to put a budget forward, and we are going to seriously work towards that. Because if we don't, it's all over. I mean, I don't know how else to tell you that. It is all over. We will cause a collapse that will be felt around the world. And unless we put our fiscal ship in order, and we have a plan to do that, and we follow that plan, then it's all over. It's all over.
Are you willing to stand by that, even if it means a temporary government shutdown around the holidays? I expect that that's where this is heading now. I think temporarily the Democrats they're going to enjoy over the next several weeks blaming Republicans for all of this. Do you believe that it would merit a shutdown unless and until you can get certain commitments from the new speaker that they will pass a budget, they will pass appropriations bills, as opposed to the constant continuing resolutions that we've seen year after year?
If we do not If we do not make a tough stand, it will not happen. But we've got time. We can do this. We can do this. We got some great minds up here. And they got to put their differences aside and quit trying to wreck the system. And they got beat, and suck it up. We got to get on. We got a country to save. Honestly, I always remember what my daddy said one night. We'd worked the polls, and it was the night Bill Clinton was winning the White House. And we were at my old house there in West Hills at 8220 Bennington Drive. I like to say we were having a traditional Italian meal. I think we had Mr. Getty's pizza in front of us. And Daddy said the blessing. He said, Lord, please don't let us lose our country. And I thought, wow, there's a World War II veteran. We just elected a draft dodger, the President of the United States. And that was his prayer. Lord, please don't let us lose our country. And that is exactly where I'm at right now. We are standing on the cusp if we do not step back from it.
Tim, thank you. I think I speak for a vast majority of the listening audience when we thank you for your stand and your vote. I think the apple cart needs to be upset. It seems to me that those that are willing to toss the apple cart are now being expected to count the apples, and I don't think that's the way that this works. So I appreciate you. Get some rest as you'll be home for a week or so and back after it next week. We'll talk to you again very soon.
Hey, thank you guys for always putting the truth out there. It means a lot. Thank y'all so much.
Thank you, Tim. I appreciate you. We'll talk to John Rose. He'll have a different take on all of this coming up at 1:05, and I'll be respectful of John's decision not to vote to vacate the chair, and we'll get the reasoning behind that decision coming up in just a few minutes. It's 12:53 on Super Talk 99.7 WTN. Efficient heating and cooling. Let's focus on the heating side of that now because we've got some cooler conditions coming up this weekend. That's right. Temperatures down in the mid-40s. That means you'll be bumping that heater on. And if the heater's not ready, who do you call? If the heater's not ready, call Jeff Eddy and Efficient Heating and Cooling. I love my rhymes. Efficient Heating and Cooling loves to help people just like you get more life out of your heating unit. And that's what it's all about, right? When they come for a call on maintenance, they're going to check the unit out, make sure everything's running as it should, make sure it's clean and ready to go for the wintertime season. Now, if they notice something, they'll let you know about that, and they'll maintenance that. They'll get it taken care of. If it is time, they'll tell you it's time, but they're never going to tell you beforehand. They don't work on commission. They just don't work that way. Jeff Eddy and his crew, they do what is right, and they've proved it time and time again. I trust them in my home, and I know you can trust them in yours. They're a diamond contractor with Mitsubishi Electric and Elite Pro Partner with Rheem. Call Jeff Eddy and Efficient Heating and Cooling today. Like I say, if your heater's not ready, call Jeff Eddy and Efficient Heating and Cooling. EfficientHVAC.net or call 615-784-4424, 784-4424.
Was founding chair of the House Freedom Caucus. He's a fierce defender of former President Trump and a lead proponent of the impeachment inquiry into President Biden. House Majority Leader Steve Scalise, who has long served in top leadership posts, has also announced a run for the gavel. Scalise is currently battling blood cancer.
The fractured Republican caucus putting the House in limbo until a new speaker is chosen. Former President Biden weighing in for the first time since McCarthy was removed and says it is critical to avoid a shutdown in November and make sure Ukraine continues to receive funding to defend itself against Russian attacks.
It does worry me, but I know there are a majority of members of the House and Senate in both parties who have said that they support funding Ukraine.
The president called on Congress to change the, quote, poisonous atmosphere in Washington, D.C. Former President Trump back in court for day 3 of his New York civil trial. ABC's Aaron Katersky is in Lower Manhattan and has more on the legal defense for Trump, who is accused of committing fraud in the valuation of properties for his family business.
They've already been largely rejected by the judge, but that is the cornerstone of Trump's defense here. Basically, the so what factor. Maybe his financial statements weren't, on the up and up, but the banks made money in the end because Trump paid back his loans, didn't miss a payment. There were no real victims here. Nobody said they would no longer do business with Trump. There's even going to be a witness called who says as much.
Yesterday, a judge overseeing the case issued a limited gag order after Trump targeted court staff in a social media post. You're listening to ABC News.
It is the Matt Murphy Show, hour number 2 on Super Talk 99.7 WTN 105. Thank you for being with us. In about 15 minutes or so, apparently the zombie apocalypse will begin. Have you seen this conspiracy theory on this emergency alert test or whatever it is?
I've seen a few different ones, but not a zombie one.
That this is designed to send something into our heads that are going to create a bunch of zombies. I don't really understand it, but I've heard it.
I saw one on Twitter last night that said that it was going to be the signal for the military to move on the civilian population.
Oh, that's a pretty good one too.
Yeah.
This is happening at 1:20 our time, correct?
Yes.
And
no, I'm sorry, 13:20 because it's the military moving on the civilian population.
Correct. And we expect what? That we'll have an interruption in our broadcast and an
all
interruption.
Communications will be cut off.
Well, they'll do something on our phones, right?
Yeah, your phone won't work.
I don't know that I appreciate my Chinese-made phone being taken over by the federal government of the United States of America for the purposes of what?
You should go on TikTok and say that.
Maybe we can get something done about it. Maybe the Chinese government will implement, project whatever. I don't know.
They'll pass a budget before that happens.
Speaking of passing budgets, let's talk to Congressman John Rose. Obviously, John makes himself available to the listeners of Middle Tennessee quite often and the listeners of his district, and we appreciate that. And he is here to talk about the activities happening yesterday in the House of Representatives and where we move from here. John, thank you for being on with us. Good afternoon. Did I do that correctly? Are we up? Yeah? Okay, there we go. Hey, John, good afternoon. Welcome.
Good afternoon, Matt. Thanks for having me on the show.
Well, it's a pleasure to have you. We always appreciate your perspective. And speaking of, give us your perspective of the vote yesterday and your decision-making behind your vote not to vacate the chair.
So, my decision is I voted against the motion to vacate. We have a very slim majority in the House, that is, Republicans do. I feel like we've been making progress under the leadership of Kevin McCarthy. Unlike the experience that some expressed, he has never lied to me. I've had a good relationship with him, and I felt like he was leading the conference in the right direction, leading the House in the right direction. I feel like the accomplishments that we had achieved throughout the year were all headed in the right direction. It took us decades to get in the mess that we're in now. And, I think you have to have the perspective and patience to know that you can't jump out of the hole that we've dug in one fell swoop. You've got to take it on step at a time. And I felt like we were moving in that right direction. And I didn't think it made sense to take out our general in the middle of the battle. As you've pointed out on the show today, we passed this continuing resolution over the weekend, giving us 45 more days, and we didn't need this interruption, frankly. And, I felt like leadership, both Speaker McCarthy and the Majority Leader Steve Scalise had given us a calendar, and, the appropriations subcommittees had been working diligently all year to get those appropriations bills before us. We haven't done this in a long time. The House, that is, hasn't done this in a long time to pass these things in regular order and get it done on time. And so you don't have the muscle memory. It's like rebuilding a team that, hasn't been used to winning. And so you have to kind of work your way to that. And I felt like we were moving in the right direction. I felt like Leader McCarthy, Speaker McCarthy had taken us in a good direction, and I felt like he deserved to stay in the battle, and particularly in the heat of the battle, because I do fear what you're saying is, it is a tall order to finish this all, even in the 45 days. It could be done, but we have to remember that we only control one half of Congress, and whether we can get all of our work done and the Senate can get their work done and we can come to agreement with the Senate on appropriations bills that the president will sign, that's a pretty tall order, and we didn't need this interruption, in my view.
So is that the reasoning behind the recess? I've not heard really a good reason behind why you would leave for 6 weeks during the August recess when you still had the appropriations work to be done. And I'm not coming at you, John, when I say this, but is that the reasoning behind it, that you felt like you had the time and simply did not have the time to get it done through regular order?
Well, so you ask a good question, and I am frustrated, as are many, about the fact that we came home at the end of July and didn't stay in Washington and work. And obviously, hindsight being 20/20, we should have all been screaming about that. I will tell you, I was there, and I didn't hear those voices. Some of them that are wanting to look back now and cast blame. I didn't hear. I was at all those conference meetings. Someone may have said it, but they certainly weren't saying it as loudly as they seem to be saying it now. Now, in retrospect, looking back, we should have stayed there until we got the job done and pushed through. And that's easy to see now. And it should have been easy to see then. But, we were making good progress throughout June and July. Now, some have raised the issue of why did we not get an earlier start on this? And that's a fair question, but I think we do have to keep it in the context of, we had a new majority starting early in the year. We had this debt ceiling issue that occupied a lot of time. The appropriations committees were laboring without a clear direction of what they had to write the bills to in terms of where the previous year was going to end up until that debt ceiling was set and the top line spending numbers were there. And so that slowed things down a little. There's limited throughput capacity. Congress can meet, we can meet around the clock, but there's a whole team of people that are working to commit all that to writing and research and get the answers to the questions. And every time an amendment comes up, you have to kind of work back through that. And so we have to keep all that in mind, that it's not just as easy as us passing laws. A lot of times I think members of Congress make this mistake that just because we pass a law, that means it can all happen immediately. That's, as you know, not the way it works. And so, I think we've made good progress this year. I think the Speaker was committed to doing the individual appropriations bills. We also have to remember, though, that since this process was put in place by law back in 1974, it's only been completed on time 4 times, and the last time it was done was 1996. So institutionally, there hasn't been a lot of buy-in to this whole process, and maybe that's something that we should take a look at, frankly. Perhaps the process that we've set out in front of us is maybe not the right process in terms of at least the recent history of the last 40 years of being able to complete it in a timely fashion.
Well, John, you and I have a good relationship, and I think you're the right man for the job in your district to represent Middle Tennessee. I say that to say this. What y'all have done a good job of in Congress is spending money that we don't have. I mean,
absolutely.
Since 2008, in 2012, the debt was $15 trillion. And today it's $33.5 trillion. And so when Kevin McCarthy made concessions in January to get the votes necessary to become House Speaker, part of those concessions was, 1, allowing a singular member to bring up a motion to vacate, which I'm, sure that some might regret at this point, and that might change down the road. But 2, it was an agreement to have these appropriations bills passed through the House by the end of the fiscal year. He did not live up to that commitment. And so, I understand, it's not you necessarily. You're just observing the goings on and reporting back to Middle Tennessee. But I understand those who are frustrated, like your fellow colleague Tim Burchett, who we just had on, who say, look, we didn't get the job done. And at some point we have to get the job done, considering the amount of debt that we owe. You and I have had these discussions many, many times over the years.
Sure, and I share the view that the debt is the number one challenge facing the country. Anyone who's heard me speak for the last 5 years knows I talk about this as one of the 3 biggest challenges, and it is the biggest of the 3. And so we have to get that under control. We have to have a orderly appropriations process if we have any chance of getting that under control. But I think you also have to keep in mind the dynamics of Congress. It's 435 people. And you have to get 218, and the current number's 216 to pass anything. And, the Republicans have a 4-seat, if everyone's there, have a 4-seat majority. It's a team sport, and you've got to, it's herding cats. All these folks have egos and want to move in their own direction. And so it's not an easy job. And I think what McCarthy committed to was to try to get it done. I think he put in place a lot of the procedures and processes to help us get it done. At the end of the day, we didn't get there by the time that we all would have hoped that we could. I think there's blame to go around for that. but we did make extraordinary progress. You know, the House passed over 70% of the discretionary spending is represented in the bills that we did get done with real cuts. And then, you know, last week, that is, we had a temporary CR, continuing resolution is what some people call it. I would have called it a temporary spending plan because it was unlike anything Congress has ever passed in terms of temporary funding. It would have made the real cuts that we all wanted to see made. Some of the discretionary budget cut by as much as 28%. It also dealt with the border. It also put in place a debt commission to really take on a bipartisan basis the non-discretionary or the so-called permanent spending that represents 75% of the federal government spending, by the way. And so I think there was a lot to be for there. And unfortunately, some in our conference let perfect be the enemy of really good. In fact, not just really good, the best ever. And then on Saturday, we had to swallow a essentially what some people call a clean continuing resolution that continued the bloated spending levels that were given to us by Chuck Schumer and Nancy Pelosi and Joe Biden. And so, you know, you want to move in the right direction. It was a giant step in the right direction. It's unfortunate that we couldn't get there. We couldn't get the leverage that might have gotten the Senate and the president there. And so then Saturday, we ended up taking a vote that was much less favorable for the country.
Well, I mean, I don't mean to belabor it because, I mean, it is what it is, and I want to ask you about moving forward, what you see over the next 45 days or so, but I don't understand for the life of me. I understand it's a complex appropriations process. I don't understand for the life of me what's so difficult about understanding that September 30th is the last day of the fiscal year.
Sure, I agree completely. I think you're exactly right, Matt. We should work to that, and we should begin the year working to that.
Well, agreed on that. So I guess Patrick McHenry becomes the Speaker pro tem. Was it Representative McHenry that made the decision to break for a week? Because that's got a lot of Middle Tennessee scratching our head. I mean, this is a big deal. This deal has been I mean, obviously we don't have the budgets in place, the appropriations bills in place. You got a 45-day stopgap. People have disagreed with that. Now we don't have a speaker. So now we got to deal with the speaker first before we deal with any of this other very important stuff second, yet you guys are off for a week. What's the deal?
Yeah, and I haven't spoken to Speaker Pro Tem McHenry about why he elected to push it out that far. I agree. Time is of the essence here. My assumption is that amid the chaos of losing the speaker and having to sort through and frankly giving the members a chance that wanted to step forward and offer themselves as a candidate for speaker, giving them a chance to organize that effort and giving the conference time to weigh the options and to consider whether or not any of these candidates can pull together the conference. So remember, again, the conference is going to elect someone to be the candidate for speaker, but then that person is going to face the same challenge that McCarthy faced back in January, is they've got to go to the floor and they've got to get the votes to get elected speaker. And in the current environment, that means they have to get virtually all the Republicans to vote for them. The Democrats are not going to help. They obviously proved that yesterday. They want to trip us and trip up the country at every turn, going so far as to pull fire alarms, apparently, to slow things down. And so you saw them slow walking their voting yesterday. So I think it matters a lot in terms of the Republican majority that the voters gave us, being able to deliver the conservative leadership that they asked us to deliver. It matters a lot that we get our act together. And so, McHenry made the judgment that period of time was needed. I would have liked to see us move faster, but it is the process we have. So it's unfortunate we're going to lose a week of that 45 days that we need to be getting this work done. And it is a tall order. I mean, you've talked about it, that we can get the rest of the appropriations bills through, the other, say, 28% of the spending that hasn't yet been dealt with by the House. The Senate hasn't passed the first bill. And then when they do, they won't be the same as the House conservative House versions, they will be the Senate versions, and then we'll have to go to conference and negotiate, and then.
All right, I'm putting John on hold while this happens. I don't even know if anybody can hear us right now. You got him? Okay. See if he can hold on to the other side. I think we've been taken over. Can anyone hear me? Hello, testing 1 2. Yeah. He's got him. Okay. Yeah, we got it. Okay. I don't know if they can hear me. I don't know. Could I be heard? You think? No. They suspended my voice. So
yeah, when the EAS cuts you off, it's nothing but the EAS.
So you guys couldn't hear me dog cussing the EAS guy for interrupting Congressman
I heard
John
an
Rose?
F-bomb. That's all I got.
Yeah, sure. I got mine. Did you get yours on your phone a little before the one on the radio?
Yeah.
I did too. Got the alert on the phone. So I think we've got John. Hopefully John can hold on because I want him to be able to finish his thought out of respect for him. A lot of response and concern by you on the super text line. We'll talk about that. And does John have a leader in the clubhouse in terms of who will be the next speaker? We'll talk with Congressman Rose about that in just a moment. 121. 125. Now, the response to the emergency alert on the super text line is delicious. 6447, I'm disappointed the zombie apocalypse did not start. 3076, OMG, I was agreeing with all of y'all all day. Then some alert came on my cell phone. Now I disagree with everything you say. That's just two. There's a lot of them. A lot of people saying they've turned into zombies based on the alert. I appreciate Congressman Rose for being able to stick around for a little while longer. And John, once again, look, I'm not here to turn friends into enemies, and I believe you're a friend of the 6th Congressional District and a friend of the state of Tennessee. But at least based on the interaction that I've got going on right now, this is not being received well in terms of the dysfunction that's happening. A lot of people believe that we need some new leadership, and I'll just leave your vote where it is and leave your decision-making process as stated by you. Let's move forward and ask this question. Do you have a candidate that you believe you can believe in? I know that Steve Scalise has offered his name. I know Jim Jordan's offered his name. Are those two individuals that you could potentially get behind?
You know, I'm going to listen to all the candidates and give them a chance to make their case. You know, this is a big job, and it's, you know, just like I was talking about Congress not having the muscle memory to do some of the stuff that we're trying to do. And so we're having to kind of learn as we go, reestablish that pattern of behavior to get us to the right answer. The same is going to be true for whoever the next leader is. It's a big job. It's a big job just leading the members, but then leading the institution and helping to organize the conference and to be successful at the ballot box politically with the next year's elections coming up. Those are big, tall orders, and I'm gonna want to ask the tough questions. I think other members will. I think that this time will end up being useful to try to winnow down the candidates and get to the right person to lead the House and ultimately to lead half of Congress and hopefully get us to the budget cutting, the fiscal responsibility, and the ending of woke policies and the getting the border under control, answering the Democrats and the progressives who want to take this country off the cliff. I think all of that has to be decided, and so I'm going to listen to each candidate. Hopefully we will find someone that not only can satisfy me, but that can pull together, you know, the 222 members of the Republican conference and get us a majority that can actually do what the American people and people right here in Middle Tennessee, want to see us do.
If our super text line is any indication, in the last couple of minutes that we have been speaking, many people who are saying that they're from the 6th District have offered their opinions on this, and it's probably about a 2-to-1 split. They were ready for McCarthy to go versus believed that it was the right call to give him another opportunity to see some appropriations bills. What is your message to the 6th Congressional District, specifically to your vote yesterday, and what you hope to accomplish moving forward in this window, this narrow window that we have to try to get the budget appropriated?
Sure. So, I think we could look in the rearview mirror and think about what has happened, but at this point it is what it is. And so we've got to figure out how to move forward and keep accomplishing the mission that the people of the 6th District sent me to Washington to do, which is to take our values to Washington and get Washington out of Tennessee. And to do that, we've got to get the majority, the Republican majority has to be able to legislate, and we need a good leader to get that done. And so we're going to try to find that leader as quickly as we can and get back on track of passing conservative legislation, including getting a conservative, budget for this year put in place that is responsible and, like our Tennessee legislature, try to get us to the place where we can live within our means. But another message I would have, Matt, for everyone listening is we all have gotten addicted. That is, the American people have gotten addicted to this deficit spending. And, we're going to all have to take a haircut and tighten our belts. And, so I would say to Tennesseans, it's going to touch us all. The government is spending, the deficit this year is going to be more than all discretionary spending combined. So that should tell everyone listening what's got to happen. It's going to have to be dramatic to get this country back with, living within its means. And we've got to grow the economy, too, frankly, which is something that we haven't even really been talking about, is how the administration is deterring the growth of the American economy.
John, thank you for your time today. We appreciate your availability to the members of the 6th Congressional, or the people of the 6th Congressional District and all throughout Middle Tennessee, and we'll talk again very soon. Take care.
Thank you. It's a great pleasure to represent the folks of Tennessee. Thanks for having me on.
There's Congressman John Rose offering his opinion. I like John. I don't know that I agree with some of his rationale as to why he decided to vote to retain Kevin McCarthy as Speaker of the House. Obviously, Kevin McCarthy was not retained yesterday. Your thoughts on this? 131 Super Talk 99.7 WTN. If you have become a zombie based on the mobile text alert that you just received, please give me a call at 615-737-9986 and grunt into the phone. It's Super Talk 99.7 WTN. Savory Spice, 2 locations to serve you. They want to up your spice game. You up your food game that way. You know, Savory Spice has many different blends to serve you. You walk into the door, you'll see the salt section. You'll see the various spices. You'll see the various flavors. They've got taco seasoning for taco night. They've got incredible Italian seasonings for your Italian dishes. I mean, they can find the seasoning that's right for the flavor that you're looking for tonight. Thank you to Savory Spice. If you're an experienced cook, never you fear, they've got a spice for you. If you are not an experienced cook, they've got a blend for you. And this is what they do. They create spice blends at Savory Spice. And you turn over the package, and they'll tell you exactly what you need to cook a delicious meal for you and your family. Like, for example, Sunday pot roast. I've mentioned this in the past, where you take a crock pot, you take some delicious meat, you take like a chuck roast, you take some veggies, you put that in there. The blend is already there. You put that in the pot, and you're done. 6-8 hours later, you've got a delicious meal for you and your family. That's what it's all about at Savory Spice, helping you cook better, helping you cook smarter, and doing so to elevate that food game by elevating your spice game. 2 locations. I mentioned that, L&L Market on Charlotte Pike in Nashville. The other's in Franklin, just off the square next to Gray's Pharmacy. Tell Holly and David, the locally owned crew, that I said I sent you to Savory Spice. Just curious if this is going to become a song or not. You could have easily transitioned that into do-do-do-do-do, Scooby-Dooby-Doo, where are you? You got some work to do, or something like that. I don't know.
Yeah, but then I wouldn't be able to play it on the do-do-do-do-do on the web.
I always liked the drum beat that got us into the Scooby-Doo song. By the way, if you experienced the emergency alert, you silly people, you're not going to turn into zombies now. They've implanted the zombie biometric into you at this point. It came electronically or electrically. It charged you inside of your body now, and now the federal government has the ability, because we're addicted to our cell phones, to turn us into zombies when they want to. That's how the conspiracy theory works. You're not going to become a zombie right now. They will patiently wait. They being, I don't know, the government, the Chinese, who knows? For those who didn't understand what was going on, it was the big day. By the way, you know what today is? It's Smokey and the Bandit Day. You know that? It's 10-4, good buddy. See what I did there?
Okay.
See, it's Smokey and the Bandit Day because it's 10-4. Good buddy. If it can be Star Wars Day, it can be Smokey and the Bandit Day too, Belle. You know what? Get ready, Belle. You're going to in for a problem, according to the President of the United States, who can't be that cogent. I mean, anyway. Today is the big day for the U.S. government's emergency alert drill, which went off. My phone went off at about 1:18, just before we went off air for about 30 seconds. It was the government sent a test message to every radio, television, and cell phone in the United States of America, regardless of where you might have had your radio or your television tuned to.
Whether you wanted it or not.
Yeah, whether you wanted it or not. Remember the old emergency broadcast alert system? The EBS, Emergency Broadcasting System. The following is a test of the emergency broadcast system. If this was an actual emergency, the following would be, and it had information or whatever. And I fear, when I was 15 years old and I started working for WTWA, your favorite easy listening hits from the 40s to the 80s, the heart of Thompson. When I started working there, my boss at the time, who was then the general manager, eventually became the owner, Mike Wall, explained to me that if this light goes off, then you need to do these certain things. What I heard was, if this light goes off, it's nuclear war. That's what I heard.
Of course.
That's what I heard, because it's a national emergency. And they're like, well, what types of situations would involve a national emergency of the sort that the federal government would take over every radio frequency in the United States of America? And the one example that they came up with first was, well, nuclear war. I mean, it was the late 1980s, after all.
And where was the station?
This was in Thompson, Georgia. Thomson, no P in Thompson.
So not exactly a ground zero position to be in.
Well, I mean, no. I don't know what you're trying to say, but all I'm saying is, when it's late at night, and
I'm saying it's a one warhead city, not a three.
Well, I'm just saying there was I still have I have the emergency alert system box, the original box that was presented to the radio station back in the 70s or whenever it was, with the red light on it. They were getting rid of that box and replacing it with some more modern technology. And so I took that, absconded of that, and took it home. I thought it was pretty cool. But, yeah, I was convinced that at one point at 11 o'clock at night on a Saturday night where I'm sitting there monitoring automated systems, that light would go off and that would be the end. We would all go poof.
And that is why we don't allow 15-year-olds on the radio anymore.
Well, I passed my exam. I passed my test, pal. All right, 140, Super Talk 99.7 WT. And here's what I want to do. We have spoken to a couple of our congressmen here in the local area. One, Tim Burchett, who voted in favor of the motion to vacate, in favor of ousting Kevin McCarthy, and a lot of applause for that. Took a lot of guts. And John Rose, Congressman John Rose, I appreciate him coming on and doing his best to explain why he did not believe it was the best course of action to replace Kevin McCarthy, saying that he felt like Kevin had gotten a lot done. He didn't get it all done. Yes, if we want to criticize a lack of timing, so be it. But he felt like the best course of action was to move forward with the current speaker and try to get some budgets passed. What I want to do is I want to hear from you, and I want you to speak directly to your congressperson. I guess you could speak to your senator if you want. But what I would love in the final minutes of this hour, and maybe extending over to next hour, you call me, we'll say our pleasantries, hello, hello, and then speak directly to your congressman. Just tell me, I'm Mike. As an example, that's Mike's on line 1. I'm Mike. I'm calling from Congressman Mark Green's district. Congressman Green, and then you say what you want to say to them. And we're going to put this podcast up on our social medias. We'll put it up on 997WTN.com, and I will share this with every single sitting member of the Tennessee delegation. I don't want your comment filtered through me. I want you as a listening audience to speak directly to Rose or Desjardins or Ogles or Burchett or Green or Harshbarger or Kustoff or, man, I got almost all of them. There's one I'm forgetting. One way or the other, you speak truth to power. Mike is in Dixon next up on the Murphy Show. Hello, Mike. How are you?
I'm good.
Mike,
So my name is, okay, all right, I'm in the 5th District, Andy Ogles. This is for him. He gave what I think is what you call a politician's answer yesterday. I didn't get to hear this morning. But here's my thing. If he's listening, or if you send this to him, make a decision. I don't care one way or the other. Make a decision. Do not try to ride the fence with a politician's answer. If you want to defend McCarthy, hey, that's good. If you want to go against McCarthy and go for whatever, that's great. Make a decision is all I want to say.
Great comment, Mike. Thank you for making it, and that's exactly what I'm looking for. I want to speak directly to leadership. Your representative is listening. Your representative will hear this. I will make sure it gets to them. What do you have to say to them? Every representative in the state of Tennessee, save Tim Burchett, voted in favor of attempting to keep Kevin McCarthy. They all have their own ideas as to why that occurred, and we've heard from several of them. We talked to Desjardins earlier in the week. He made his intentions plain. Just spoke to Congressman John Rose. Heard Andy Ogles earlier today on Chris Hand's show. And Chris did a great job discussing this with Andy. And sadly, Andy, he had emerged as an outlier in Tennessee politics, and he kind of set us up to believe that he was willing to do what was necessary to get this burdensome debt under control. And he demanded of the speaker concessions early on in his congressional career, and he led us up to the water, and then nothing. It feels like there's something going on that I don't quite understand. I don't know what that would be. What has changed since Andy was a part of the group demanding concessions from the speaker's office and today? Well, I can tell you some things that have changed. I don't know if these things have anything to do with his decision to vote in the way that he did. Andy presented his argument to Chris and to the listening audience of WTN that he felt like the focus needed to be on avoiding a continuing resolution, on avoiding an omnibus spending package, and on getting budget appropriations passed. He said quite plainly that he did not feel now was the time. My question, if not now, when? The definition of insanity, doing the same thing over and over again, expecting a different outcome or result. Russell was on the line prior to me resetting with an appeal to you to speak directly to your congressional leadership. But, Russell, you're welcome to do so or speak about anything of your choosing. Good afternoon, sir.
Hey, how you doing?
I'm doing well, Russell. What's on your mind?
Well, I think there's so much played into the whole situation with the speaker being vacated. It's what's done is done, and we want to complain about who did or didn't vote for it and all of that. Let's just get rid of that and move forward and find someone who's going to do what we want them to do. I don't know if Steve Scalise is that person or not, but we'll know is within a week after who's voted in whether or not they're the right person.
Well, I will say this about Steve Scalise, and it's a great comment that you make, Russell, and I understand why you might want to believe what's done is done. This will have lingering effect for some time throughout the halls of Congress and, by extension, throughout the United States of America. The Democrats are going to use this against the American people by using it against the Republican Party. The Democrats will use this to avoid conversation about the infirmity of the President of the United States. They'll use this to avoid conversation about their inability to get inflation under control, their inability to get interest rates under control, their inability to get the economy running again, their inability to justify or explain the ridiculous spending that's going on with Ukraine. I mean, we can't get an audit of the spending, much less a justification of it. And not to mention the southern border and their inability to control the southern border or unwillingness to control the southern border. So all of these things will be back burner issues for a hot minute. So it does have ramifications on that front. But secondarily, I would say this about Steve Scalise. Steve Scalise, if he wants the speakership and has the physical ability to do so, has earned, in my opinion, that right. I like Jim Jordan a lot. And if Jim Jordan can get the votes, I'm all in. But Steve Scalise almost gave his life for this country. In an amazing bit of irony, you know, for those who don't know what happened in Alexandria, Virginia, in what was it, 2017? I won't labor over the details of that situation again, but go look at that. Imagine this. Steve Scalise was shot. He was one of the most wounded the day that a crazed lunatic Bernie Sanders supporter opened fire with a rifle.
But it was a mostly peaceful protest.
Well, right. On the Republicans who were practicing for the congressional baseball game in Alexandria. You know, I went with Congressman Gary Palmer years ago and toured that field. And he showed me, he pointed me, we walked to where the shooter was. We walked to where Scalise was playing shortstop when he was gunned down and almost died. He almost bled to death on that field. Were it not for the quick actions of several there in attendance. Several others were shot. Congressman Mo Brooks was there of Alabama, the 5th District. Congressman Gary Palmer was there of the 6th District. I don't know if any Tennessee congressmen were there at the time. But I know this. Had Steve Scalise not been there, you know, the average member of Congress doesn't get security with them 24/7. But Steve Scalise was in leadership. He was, he was the majority leader. He was certainly the minority leader, if not the majority leader. I think this was in 2017. One way or the other, when you're in leadership, you have Capitol Police security following you around. Steve Scalise is on record saying that he considered not being there that day to practice because he had other things that he needed to get done. But he made the decision to go to practice. And as a result, 2 Capitol Police officers went with him. Those 2 police officers were the ones that eventually killed the assailant. Had Steve Scalise not been there, he would have survived the injuries that almost killed him. But untold numbers of people would have been killed. They had nowhere to go, by the way. There was a fence around that entire facility, and the exits to the facility would have been going toward the gunman. Imagine the emotions that go through your head if you're Steve Scalise, knowing that you literally had to take a bullet to save lives. As a result of your presence, you were shot and almost killed. But it was only the result of your presence that ended up in others being saved. Because were those police officers not there, Everyone on that field could have been slaughtered. With that in mind, and with Steve Scalise, with his conservatism in mind, I think he's earned the right to offer himself up to this role in public service if he so desires. That's my take on that. More of your calls and more of your comments directly to your congressional representatives as we continue. It is the Matt Murphy Show on Super Talk 99.7 WTN. Super Talk 99.7 WTN, anticipating some headlines from Mac Morey back in the Super Talk 99.7 WTN newsroom in just about a minute or so, and full phone lines right now, so the opportunity exists for you to speak truth to power directly to your congressman. We'll make sure that they hear this. What we will do at the beginning portion of next hour, we'll get to Drew and Jonathan and Deborah and David and whoever's on line 5 and John on line 6. And we will get your name. We will say hello. We'll offer the pleasantries, and then I'll give you a chance to tell me who your congressman is and what your message is to your congressman. Good, bad, or indifferent. It is time for us to speak back to those who represent us in Washington, D.C. We'll do that next hour. It's The Murphy Show. Also, a thought or two about the Justin Jones case that is going to the courts against Cameron Sexton. That's on the way on Super Talk 99.7 WTN.
Two o'clock, I'm Mac Morey with your top stories. 85 degrees, partly sunny, little cloudy. Complete weather forecast just a few minutes away. The race to succeed Kevin McCarthy as House Speaker shaping up. Stephen Portnoy.
There are two declared candidates thus far. One is Ohio's Jim Jordan. The chairman of the Judiciary Committee was founding chair of the House Freedom Caucus. He's a fierce defender of former President Trump and a lead proponent of the impeachment inquiry into President Biden. House Majority Leader Steve Scalise, who has long served in top leadership posts, has also announced a run for the gavel. Scalise is currently battling blood cancer.
And the House is adjourned until next Wednesday as Republicans try to plot their next move. Crime in Tennessee. The man connected to the shooting that injured a pregnant woman and killed her unborn baby has now been arrested. 23-year-old Demarius Claybrooks Jr. was charged with criminal homicide. 23-year-old Shay Beard was 8 months pregnant at the time of this shooting. Claybrooks Jr. allegedly fired his pistol at the vehicle Beard was in after another passenger had got out and sprayed bear spray at a group of people. Beard was in the front seat and got hit by those shots. The spraying of the bear mace is believed to be related to an ongoing dispute between several women in the area, according to police. And Beard is still in recovery at Vanderbilt Medical. And 75,000 healthcare workers are on strike today in the largest strike in U.S. history. Alex Stone.
In Colorado and other states like California and Virginia, nurses and other healthcare workers at Kaiser Permanente are on the picket lines demanding higher pay and better staffing levels after ranks were decimated during the pandemic. Michael Ramey is an ultrasound tech in San Diego and says they've made it clear what they want.
Kaiser would invest in their staff here and make an investment in the patients.
Kaiser says it is continuing to bargain even during the strike and that its hospitals and offices remain open with contract workers.
And that is the latest news. Weather's next. I'm Mac Morey, WTN News.
USS stands for United Structural Systems. Let's talk about what they stand for. They stand for peace of mind with you when it comes to your home. Peace of mind. In other words, if you believe something's wrong, you don't call USS because you think everything's A-okay, right? You believe that something's going on in your home that might cause a structural issue or a foundation repair issue or a waterproofing issue that could result in long-term and very significant and serious damage. And so USS comes out to your home. You get a problem solver, and they provide just what I said, peace of mind. You're not getting somebody who's worried about meeting a sales quota. You're not getting someone who's trying to upsell you on anything. They merely want to educate you on what's going on with your home and correct the issue. At USS, their only measure of success is how satisfied you, the homeowner, actually is. This attitude and this culture is why so many people, over 25,000 people, have said yes, USS is the number one in the business. Yes to USS in Southern Kentucky. Yes to USS throughout Middle Tennessee. And yes to USS in Northern Alabama. Homeowners simply trust United Structural Systems, keeping homes safe and dry since 1994. Let's go ahead and give them a call. If you notice the telltale signs, it's time to get a professional on the scene. 615-488-7855. 488-7855 or USSTN.com. Tell them Matt Murphy sent you to USS. All right, here we are. Here we go. Hour number 3 of the Matt Murphy Show, this Wednesday edition, October 4. I mentioned that it is Smokey and the Bandit Day. 10-4, good buddy. It is our episode 428, and now is an opportunity for you to speak to your individual district representative in the state of Tennessee. That's right. I want you to speak directly to your representative about what went on yesterday in the halls of Congress. Do you support? Do you not support? How do you feel about so many of the Tennessee delegation voting in support of Kevin McCarthy? I believe that that goes against the majority will of conservatives and libertarians in the state of Tennessee. I believe that if you polled the state of Tennessee conservatives, you would see about a 65 to 35% split. Is that fair, Headless Bell?
I think that's fair.
I mean, and the 35 don't necessarily support Kevin McCarthy, but they support the concepts presented by Andy Ogles earlier today on the Chris Hand Show that now's not the time. We've got precious days clicking by. I'm not saying I agree with this. I'm saying that was his position. John Rose took much the same position, that it was the wrong time to change leadership because we're, quote, in the middle of the battle. I think Andy Ogles used a football analogy, So most of the 35% don't have any love for Kevin McCarthy, but they believe the timing is wrong. Many of you, like me, believe there's never a good time to upset the apple cart. And
that makes every time a good time.
Yeah, and that makes every time a good time. That's exactly right. Now's as good a time as any. I mean, looking at this broadly, and I cannot get beyond this, Kevin McCarthy understood the promises that he made to individuals that had concerns about him becoming speaker. And one of the promises that he made was that he would get appropriations bills passed by September 30th. What the Senate does with them is their business. And by the way, if those appropriations bills had gone to the United States Senate, you would not hear Matt Murphy speaking ill of Kevin McCarthy in the manner that I am. But he made a promise and did not fulfill that promise. And in the midst of not fulfilling that promise, you can talk all you want about, the debt ceiling back in June. And you can talk about, in July, they quagged up the system quite badly in July, Murph. You got to understand that regular order's a pain in the you-know-what. I get all of that.
And so did he when he made those promises.
So did he, and he ought to have gotten that certainly by the time he called for a 6-week vacation. Well, you ought not make the... I'm so sick of this, and I told my good friend Gary Palmer this privately earlier today because Gary's pretty down about all of this. He's worried about the future of our republic. He really is. And I said, well, Gary, I can't get beyond the fact that they went on vacation. And he said, I can't answer to that either, Matt, except that he thought that he could get it done in time. I said, well, I guess, sometimes actions have consequences. Sometimes you don't come back from that.
Sometimes your screw-up is so egregious that you get fired. And he got fired.
And he got fired. He serves at the pleasure of the body, and the body fired him. And it only took 8 Republicans to accomplish that task. Brian writes in and says, on this festive Smokey and the Bandit Day, let's remember the great Sheriff Buford T. Justice and his answer to Junior about hush puppies. I ain't got no time for that crap. By the way, it is one of my all-time top 10 favorite comedic performances is Jackie Gleason.
I need you to explain something to me. Why is the Honeymooners such a big deal?
The Honeymooners?
Yeah. That made his career. Why? You know how many seasons it ran for?
Like 2?
1.
It was a pretty big deal at the time because it was a live to television broadcast. It kind of created a new type of American sitcom. It was groundbreaking in the situation comedy format.
All based on spousal abuse.
Well, it was a different time. To the moon, Alice!
If it was so good, why did it only last 1 season?
Because Jackie Gleason didn't want to do it anymore. I thought it lasted 2. It was only 1.
It was only 1. It was no MASH.
Oh, MASH. I hated MASH. Oh, I hated it.
Get
oh,
out. Leave.
The theme, Suicide is Pain. Oh, I hated every.
You do it right.
Oh,
isn't it amazing how you got the melody perfectly correct?
I could do the Honeymooners, too, if you wanted. I don't know anything about the Honeymooners outside of I watched it late at night on Saturday nights after Saturday Night Live went off. They were airing it locally on NBC, I guess, at 1 o'clock in the morning or something. I shouldn't have been up at that time. But Jackie Gleason as Sheriff Buford T. Justice is one of my all-time top 10s.
I'll give him huge props for that part versus the Honeymooners.
Don't go home. What does he say? Oh, what's the line? And it's don't leave, don't go home, and don't play with yourself. That's what he says. Wouldn't look nice on my roadway. Anyway, all right, here's your opportunity to speak to your congressman. We'll make sure that previous portion of the broadcast doesn't get to them, but starting here, that we speak truth to power. What do you have to say? Deborah is next up with a message, I believe, to Representative Scott Desjardins. Hey, Deborah, good afternoon.
Good afternoon. Yes, mine is Desjardins, but my comment is to all of the ones who get elected. I'm so tired of hearing the word I. I'm going to do this. I want that. I did this. It's not about them. They're supposed to be representing us and what we want, not what they want. And maybe they need to find a way to be more connected to their constituents and find out what we want them to do.
Well spoken, Deborah. Well spoken, and I will get that message to Scott Desjardins, your representative. David is in Lebanon with a message of his own. Hey, David, how are you?
Yeah, I'm doing great, Matt. I just got to say, love the show, and I'm so glad you replaced the knucklehead that was before you, and they sent him to mornings. But in the 6th, John Rose, personally, thank you for voting the way you did. While I support Matt and the points that he has, Mr. Gates is absolutely valid. I think it's tactically not a smart move, and I think you have to think longer term and bigger than just sheerly being an ideologue. So thank you, John Rose.
Very good, David. I appreciate those perspectives, or that perspective, and certainly understand it, even as I disagree with it. I don't think there's ever going to be a good time to upset the apple cart, but that's not why I'm asking you to call in. I want you to speak directly to your congressman. And what message will you send to them? Bill is next in the borough. Hey, Bill, how are you?
I'm doing peachy. How about yourself?
I'm doing well. What's your message? Your congressman is Scott Desjardins, correct?
Yes. What I want to say is I was ambivalent about McCarthy until he made the following comment, that the continuing resolution would have the people in the military and the state government not being paid. And that was a Democratic talking point, and it was an out-and-out lie because they all got paid the Friday before. So, and that's why I'm glad he's gone, and you better get with the program.
Bill, I like it. Thank you very much for the comment. I appreciate it. Drew is next in Dixon. Hello, Drew. Good afternoon. Welcome. Hello, Drew.
Yes, sir. I'm here. Can you hear me?
I can hear you fine.
Yeah, sorry. Yeah, my message is for Representative Kustoff. I live in the 8th District. We have $34 trillion of U.S. debt. We have $1.8 trillion in student loan debt, 1.3 in credit card debt, but then we have $194 trillion of unfunded liabilities. You hold the purse strings. Your body of government holds the purse strings to the United States of America. Grow some balls, elect a speaker that is going to pass the 12 appropriations bills and get this budget under control, because I'm a small business owner. I hold the purse strings to my business. I don't have an open checkbook, so neither does the United States of America. Get this fixed or you will be replaced.
Well spoken, Drew, and I'll make sure that Kustoff hears the message loud and clear. 615-737-9986, an opportunity. We do this on occasion on these big issues to give you the chance to speak directly, not to me, but to your congressional representative. You will get the pleasantries out of the way. We'll say hello, and then you get to speak truth to power. With that in mind, Jonathan is next. Jonathan, thank you for calling in. How are you, sir?
I'm doing fine. How about yourself?
I'm doing well. Tell me what district you reside in and who you want to speak to.
6th District, John Rose.
All right. What do you have for John Rose?
It seemed like towards the end of the interview, he was kind of saying that it was going to be tough to crack down on the budget. I just want to say it's time to do some hard things. I voted for him, I think, 3 times now. Proud to have him as a representative, but we've got to get the budget under control. McCarthy didn't get the job done, plain and simple. It's time to get the job done.
Well, I agree with that. And like I said to him when we had him on, and I appreciate John Rose for his willingness to come on. He knows that it was a tough decision on his part, and he knows that a lot of people are concerned about that decision-making process. One of the things he noted was that, well, we didn't get into this situation overnight, and we're not going to get out of it overnight. Well, I'm looking at the math here. And, man, when we started spending money, we started spending money. The United States of America has been in existence for a good amount of time. You know, some would say started in 1776 with the Declaration of Independence. Others might point to, the Constitution, I think, was 1787. I think that's right. Put up for ratification after the Articles of Confederation obviously flamed out. And for the vast majority of our time in existence, we've carried no significant debt outside of debt incurred due to wartime. In 1980, which, believe it or not, was not that long ago. I know it seems like a lifetime ago. It's 43 years ago. So this extends beyond the life of, for example, Mac Morey. But, Bell, you and I were alive in 1980.
Yes.
Want to guess what the national debt was in 1980?
$700 billion?
$915 billion.
Oh.
Less than $1 trillion. By 1990, that had gone up to $3.1 trillion in 10 years.
Part of the problem is that we've got all these people in D.C. that have bought into the monetary theory that printing money ultimately doesn't matter when it does. You can see that just from what they did, the inflation it caused in the last 3 years.
It doesn't matter for their purpose. I mean, if their purpose is to get reelected and to serve and to benefit from service.
In that case, it's very helpful.
It's helpful for them because they can make up money and throw money toward people's problems and convince those people that they're doing the right thing in order to get the votes. When in the long term, it's going to damn this country into fracture. We will cease to exist as the United States of America before we pay back $34 trillion. I believe we will cease to exist as a country in the whole before we balance our budgets, because there's too many people who don't care about balanced budgets. So,
and everybody's little pet project is so important that it can't be cut.
Oh, yeah, it's much more important. Much more important. So in 1980, just as and I know we've got a lot of people on the phones, and I'm going to get to each of you. Don't you worry, so that you can speak to your individual congressman. In 1980, it was $915 billion. In 1990, it had grown to $3.1 billion, which seemed like a lot of money at the time. That's around the time. That was about a year before I went to college.
You mean trillion?
3.1. Did I say billion?
Yeah.
I meant trillion.
Okay.
$3.1 trillion. 10 years after that, by 2000, it had grown to $5.6 trillion. So, between 1980 and 1990, you went up about $2.1 trillion. Between 1990 and 2000, you went up another $2.5 trillion. And here's where we start getting exponential. So in the year 2000, remember that? Conan O'Brien? No? It's good. $5.6 trillion. In 8 years, by 2008, it had gone up to $10.7 trillion. $10.7 trillion in 2008. 15 years later, between 2008 and today, it's gone up to $34 trillion. That's a hockey stick. It's unsustainable. And most Americans are oblivious to it or don't care. They don't care.
Isn't interest like the single biggest expenditure now in the budget?
No, I think Medicare and Medicaid is the biggest expense. I think actually I can tell you what it is. No, you might be right. So before we get to that, you know what the expectation is by 2027, 4 years from now?
50?
$45 trillion. $45 trillion. Growing the U.S. federal debt to GDP ratio to 150%. In 2000, it was 56%, and we are told that a country cannot long sustain a GDP to debt ratio of over 100%.
We just print all the money we want.
We just
tax
the rest of the
tax
money.
The rich.
To answer your question, Bell, as we stand, the largest budget items, Medicare and Medicaid is at $1.6 billion. $1.6 trillion. Medicare and Medicaid. Healthcare, $1.6 trillion. Social Security rings in at $1.3 trillion. And defense is at about $795 billion. The current interest payment on the debt is right at $712 billion. However, in 4 years, the expectation is that the interest on the debt will grow to $2.9 trillion annually, which will exceed Medicare and Medicaid, as well as Social Security and the Defense Department. It will be, by 2027, in 4 years, the largest single payment that the federal government makes on an annual basis to any project or program. There you go. That is the consequence.
They will literally have to print money to be able to facilitate those payments, which is going to make every dollar you earn worth less, which means they'll have to print more to facilitate the payments.
Eventually, Republicans will start calling on tax increases.
Mm-hmm.
They will have to. They'll have to.
But those tax increases will be to maintain the spending levels,
right,
or to buy more votes with new spending. It won't be to get the debt down.
Once again, we talk about this all the time, and I feel compelled to remind you, newbies, when they talk about cutting, they never cut. They cut increases. There's an embedded increase. Last year we spent $100. This year we're going to spend $105. And somebody comes along and says, we can't spend all this money. We need to cut. Let's cut it to $102. Yay! We cut. No, you didn't. You cut the increase.
Or conversely, you got these big spenders who come out of the woodwork going, they're trying to slash these programs to the bone. What, by only increasing it 3% instead of 5%?
And then, in the meantime, 4504 tells us where all of this is going. Can you say quadrillion? I thought you could. Good for you. It's 224 on Super Talk 99.7 WTN. The Dr. Gill Center for Back, Neck, and Chronic Pain Relief wants to see you. For over 30 years, they've been helping people just like you. I had an opportunity to sit down when I first got to Nashville with Dr. Gill himself, and we talked about how he developed the programs that he has available to you, how he brought spine decompression technology to Middle Tennessee, how that has affected and helped so many different people in our community, and how it can help you. And now that extends to beyond just back pain, lower back or neck pain. It goes to elbow pain, hip pain, knee pain even. I mean, these are all treatable pains without the need for pills, without the need for surgeries, without the need for needles. It's time to get back to a pain-free life. You can do this through the Dr. Gill Center for Back, Neck, and Chronic Pain Relief. I invite you to give them a call today. Schedule that appointment. Make the trip to Franklin. You will be so pleased with the service that you get, with the experience that they have, and with the pain relief that they deliver at the Dr. Gill Center. They always like to say, don't take a pill. Call Dr. Gill. And the Dr. Gill Center for Back, Neck, and Chronic Pain Relief in Franklin. Here's the number, 615-882-4838, 882-4838 for the Dr. Gill Center.
The race forward to see who the new House Speaker is on. A crash in Tennessee, plus mourners lining up for the Dianne Feinstein funeral. That and more coming up 2:30 Super Talk 99.7 WTN.
Hey, Mac Maury, I have a question.
I have an answer, maybe. Hopefully.
What were you doing when your phone went, ma, ma, ma?
I was listening to you.
Okay.
Actually.
He just lied. He just so
I
lied. He
was
asleep.
listening to you.
He was asleep and it woke him up.
I don't believe you.
I was.
I don't believe you.
Because I was like, wait, why isn't it happening on the station? I thought it was all going to be at the same time, but
apparently the telephone, our cell phone, they went off a little earlier than the
mine was like
the radio
117,
station.
118.
Yeah, something like that. Well, I have a lot of people telling me that they have the strongest desire in the world to go eat brains now. So apparently the zombie apocalypse is now upon us. We'll get more to your calls. Connie and Mario and Joan and Daniel, hang in there. I promise I'll get to each of you desiring to speak to your individual representative. I got a John Rose on the line. I got a Desjardins on the line. I got a Mark Green on the line. And I got a Davidson County, and I don't know who that is on the line, but that could be one of what, 3? Is that right? Yeah, that's right. 5, 6, or 7?
Andy, John, or Mark?
Yeah. That'd be the number 7. We'll get each of you in moments right after the news. It's 2:30 on Super Talk 99.7 WTN.
30 minutes after the hour of 2 o'clock, I'm Mac Maury with your top stories. 85 degrees in Music City. Got a full weather forecast in 2 minutes. Right now in our nation's capital, Republican Congressman Jim Jordan of Ohio says he will run for House Speaker after the historic vote yesterday to oust fellow Republican Congressman Kevin McCarthy. Meanwhile, Tennessee 5th District Congressman Andy Ogles is defending his decision to not vote to oust Kevin McCarthy as Speaker. Ogles tells WTN's The Chris Hand Show he thinks its constituents wanted him to pass the spending cuts in the appropriations bills before getting rid of McCarthy as Speaker.
I'm up here fighting like hell, and I'll be damned if I'm going to be called a rhino because I want to continue to cut spending.
The House is adjourned until next Wednesday as Republicans try to plot their next move. A crash in Tennessee. Giles County officials are investigating a 3-car crash in Pulaski, Tennessee. The crash happened at West College Street and 1st Street in downtown Pulaski. Officials say someone in a stolen Mercedes was speeding before running into 2 other vehicles. That Mercedes then was reportedly ditched off of I-65 around exit 22. Right now, it's not known whether anyone was hurt or killed in that crash or if the driver of the stolen vehicle is still on the run. And in California, mourners are lining up in San Francisco to pay their respects to Senator Dianne Feinstein, who's lying in state below the mayor's office she once occupied. Alex Stone.
Inside the echo-filled rotunda of San Francisco City Hall, Dianne Feinstein's body lying in state, her casket draped in an American flag. Feinstein was the first female mayor of the city, thrust into the job in 1978 when Mayor George Moscone and Supervisor Harvey Milk were assassinated. She went on to represent California in the Senate for 6 terms. Feinstein died last week at the age of 90. Her memorial service is set for Thursday.
And that is the latest news. Weather's next. I'm Mac Maury, WTN News.
Gentlemen, are you feeling lesser than? Do you feel not yourself? Maybe you're low in energy, motivation, or drive. And yes, maybe you're at an age, and it happens to a lot of guys, no shame in that game, right, where you're just not motivated in the bedroom. Now, that's a private matter, and I'm not here to delve into it any further than to say Tennessee Men's Clinic can help you. Why would you suffer through? Did you know, for example, that when it comes to energy or motivation or drive or libido, that most men wait years after they notice negative impact before they do anything about it. Why would you wait that long? Why not go ahead and allow the folks at Tennessee Men's Clinic to assist you? They will give you a complete examination. They'll take a little blood work, and they'll get results day of to figure out if there's something that they can solve going on inside of you naturally that can help you get back to life. That's what it's all about, whether it's a T level or what it might be. I don't know, but I do know this. If you make the call to Tennessee Men's Clinic, you'll be happy that you did. So many men have done so, and so many men have found positive results. 615-208-9090, 208-9090, 2 locations to serve, and you can schedule an appointment in either of those locations at that telephone number. One in Midtown Nashville, the other's in Cool Springs, in Franklin. Busy locations, sure, but they have plenty of time for you. It's the Tennessee Men's Clinic. Find out more at TennesseeMen'sClinic.com. Super Talk 99.7 WTN. I promised you I would get to a commentary on the latest from one of the Bull Bleep Trio. I don't even call them the Bullhorn Trio anymore. They're the Bull Bleep Trio. That would be Justin Jones. Justin Jones is suing anybody that he can get his hands on, arguing that his due process rights, his constitutional civil liberties, were violated because he could not run roughshod over legislative proceedings this past April. I'll give you more on that coming up in just a moment. It's 2:38 on Super Talk 99.7 WTN, offering you an opportunity to speak truth to power. We do this on occasion on these bigger issues where you speak directly to your representative. You call me, we get these pleasantries out of the way. Hello, 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 how are you, how are you? And then you speak directly to your representative. Tell me whose district you live in and what your message is for that person. You can speak to them directly, like Joan is going to do with Representative Mark Green, if I don't have that mistaken. Hey, Joan, how are you?
I'm good. How are you, Matt?
I'm doing very well. Your representative is Mark Green?
Yes, sir.
All right. You just, I'll give you the floor and the microphone, and you take it away and speak to Representative Green.
I'm very proud of him for supporting Representative Speaker McCarthy. I'm very ashamed of the other 8, especially the Tennessean. I think they gave the Democrats exactly what they wanted. They've embarrassed the Republicans, and they've disgraced them, and that's what the Democrats wanted, and they've got it. They need to be up there to represent the people, and I don't think they're doing it very well.
Well, very well. I have some questions for you, but I don't want to come off like I'm challenging you on any of that. But let me just ask you this way: does the debt concern you at all, and do you believe that they had made some good progress this year under the leadership of McCarthy regarding dealing with that?
Yes, sir, I do, and I am very concerned with it.
Okay.
But it's like the border. Joe Biden's main cause of all of it. He needs to be the one that's slapped on the wrist, that's all he's been getting. He needs more than that. But,
well, I agree with you there. We agree on that, Miss Joan. I tell you that.
This Matt Gaetz reminds me of my little, when she was 2-year-old great-granddaughter fighting over a toy. But what they don't realize or seem to realize or care, that's the main thing, I think, is the toy they're fighting over now is America and the American people. And they need to straighten up and start acting like that. In my opinion.
Well, Ms. John, I appreciate the opinion, and I appreciate the perspective and your willingness to call and share it with us. Thank you.
Let me tell you one more thing.
Yes, ma'am.
I still watch The Honeymooners, and I love them.
I do, too. I like The Honeymooners. My favorite scene in The Honeymooners, and maybe I'm predisposed to like this scene because I'm a golf guy. I got golf on the brain because I got a golf outing coming up this weekend where Ralph Cramden is trying to teach Norton how to play golf. And he goes, you stand here and you address the ball. And Norton says, all right. Hello, ball. You'd have to see it. If you've seen it, you're giggling right now because it's funny. Hello, ball. Get out of here. Daniel is in Nashville next up with a message to his congressional representative. Hello, Daniel. How are you?
Oh, pretty good. I live in Antioch, so I think Andy is my rep. I don't know. I'm kind of upset with all of our party and government and everything. My comment is I'm a firm believer in term limits. And if what happened to McCarthy is an eye-opener to everybody else up there, that if you don't do your job, you can get fired, then so be it. I'm glad that someone finally stood up and took a shot and someone got fired over it, although I don't think McCarthy was a bad person. It's just that for 60 years we've been lied to and promised to and everything, and there needs to be term limits. That doesn't need to be a lifetime job. So, I'm glad that someone stood up and someone got fired, and maybe that opened the eyes of the rest of the government up there that you're not there for life and you can be fired very quickly and very shortly.
Well spoken, and I appreciate what you're saying about term limits. For a long time, I spit the bit on term limits, Daniel, and I thank you for the call. Yes, you are correct that you're either Andy Ogles or maybe you're John Rose. It really depends on whereabouts you define Antioch. That looks to be cutting right along the lines there, but I think you're probably going to be Andy Ogles. That said, on the issue of term limits, for a long time, I was of the belief, and I still maintain, that we have term limits every couple of years for House of Representative members, every 6 years for United States senators, in as much as we can go to the polls and we can vote them out at any point that they're up for re-election. However, over the years, you come to understand, and it's become more important as I've gotten older, the power of incumbency and the amount of power that people like Mitch McConnell have to determine the future of a United States senator with regard to the purse. They have such a wealth of money to throw at the incumbents. Because the incumbents are known commodities, they like keeping the incumbents in place. They don't like primary challenges when it comes to the House of Representatives because that spends money that they want to spend against Democrats. At least that's what they claim. The power of the incumbency is far too great, in my opinion, and it needs to be battled back against, potentially with term limits. I wouldn't have a problem with that. Now, there's a downside to term limits, in as much as you are limiting the ability of an individual that's doing good work to continue to serve, and I think that goes against the concept of a representative republic. Secondarily, you're giving more power to the bureaucracy because the bureaucracy continues to exist beyond the term of an individual congressman or woman. And with that in mind, the bureaucracy will take over, and they will explain to these newbies how things are and how they're supposed to be. And sadly, the neophytes might go along with it. That is the potential downturn on it. But I agree with you that I wouldn't have trouble with term limits. It would turn career politicians into citizen statesmen, one would hope.
Well, that's something else that he broke a promise on, that he agreed to bring term limit legislation to the floor, and he never did it.
Never did it. And there's a lot of excuses as to why he did it. I hear a lot of excuses out of Kevin McCarthy and others in leadership. I do not hear a lot of promises kept. Several of them were kept, but not all of them. Mario is next in the borough, and I believe that would be Scott Desjardins. Hello, Mario. How are you?
I'm doing fine. Thank you for taking my call. Yes, I already voted the last time for myself, not for Scott Desjardins, because I don't want a Justin Jones, but I want a Margaret Taylor Greene that represents me. And when it's enough, it's enough. This lady, I disagree with 100% with her. And what I want to say is this: the representative body do they not really know the power that they have? You cut the funding for any agency, and they're done. And I support my guys. I support anybody that stands up and it says enough is enough. When is it going to be enough? When it's too late? No.
Well spoken. I appreciate the call, Mario, and I'm going to get to as many as I possibly can before we have to hand off to Brian Wilson in the drive. We'll have a little conversation with Brian, get his thoughts on some of the activity going on today. Several have put their hat into the ring. Congressman Hearn has officially announced that he's running for Speaker of the House. Jim Jordan has announced he has interest in Speaker of the House, and Representative Steve Scalise has also announced that he has interest in it as well. Billy is next. Billy, thank you for your call. How are you?
Hey, what's going on, Matt? Thanks for taking my call, brother.
Of course, Billy. What's your message to Scott Desjardins?
Yeah, I want to tell him if they really want to do something about cutting the budget, take all that money they were going to, that the Democrats want to spend on this Green New Deal crap, cut the funding for, the Ukraine, shore up our borders, find these people that just poured into our country and ship them out and make them come back in legally so we can vet them and get about our business. Take this stupid rule that, one person can come to the floor and just start this whole process over again. It's kind of like the Democrats pulling the fire alarm. That's the Republican way of pulling the fire alarm. So instead of doing what they should be doing, going about our business, they're up there, putting their thumb in their butt.
Well, I agree with a lot of what you said. There are way too many Republicans that have bought into this war with Ukraine that it almost makes it impossible that we will not see continued funding in that regard. But I don't disagree with you that we need to focus ourselves on our own borders as opposed to the Ukrainian borders. Let's see. Let me try to get one more in here before I have to suspend. Let's see. Forrest is in Mount Juliet. Hey, Forrest, how are you?
I'm not doing worth crap.
I appreciate that, Forrest. I feel the same way a lot of times.
Yeah, this just makes it hard to sleep at night, going to bed thinking about all this crap going on in Washington. But my comment is for John Rose. Hope he gets this. I think he's become, I know I have voted for him maybe the last 2 times. I don't know how long he's been, but I think he's become part of the bureaucracy up there. He's listened to many fellow people up there and becomes part of the machine, and he does not represent his constituents here in Middle Tennessee. We don't feel like that. And my friends or me, we don't. We want them to clear everything out and bring in something new, just like Tim Burchett. And anyway, I won't vote for him again. If there's another Republican on the ballot, I will not vote for him. I will vote for him if he's the only one running against a Democrat, because the old saying by the great Chairman Ann, there are a lot of bad Republicans, but there are no good Democrats. And I'll hang up.
That's well said. There's a lot of bad Republicans, but there are no good Democrats. In 2023, I don't disagree with that at all. All right, that's all we can do in terms of sending direct messages to your congressional representatives. We'll make sure that all of them get those messages. It's 2:49. We'll receive our message from Brian Wilson coming up in a moment about what's happening on the drive this afternoon. That's next on Super Talk 99.7 WTN. Super Talk 99.7 WTN 257, almost 258. Soon to hand off to the drive with Brian Wilson. Brian joins us right now to discuss, well, what he will be discussing this afternoon. So, Brian, I don't know if you offered to take. If you did, I missed it. But now we know that there are a few players that are vying to be the next speaker. Mm-hmm. Jim Jordan's one of them. Representative Hearn is another. Steve Scalise is another. I'm of the opinion, Brian, all other things being equal, that Steve Scalise has demonstrated service to his country. If his health allows him to do so.
It's all about the health with him. I mean, the question that's sort of the elephant in the room, and he has to address it, is, what is his situation?
Right.
And what are the likelihoods that, he's strong enough. It's not a job that you would, you wouldn't send an injured football player out on the field into play, so, is he up to it is the question. And I don't think he has answered that question to the satisfaction of many in the conference. I like Jim Jordan a lot. I'd be fine if he was the speaker. But you're talking about people. All the people that are being considered are people who voted for McCarthy yesterday.
That's right. That's the irony of all of this, right?
Well, listen, they always say that we get our marching orders, and we get our talking points, and we all go out there and we say the same thing. I'm going to disabuse people of that notion coming up in my next program.
Oh, wow. I love it. I look forward to it. Let's get it on. Brian Wilson in the Drive coming up next from 3 until 7. We'll be back high noon tomorrow. Until such time, we'll be listening to Brian, and we hope you have a great afternoon. Have a wonderful time this afternoon. Hug the loved ones, and we'll talk to you tomorrow at noon. Until then, so long.